Solar winds swept clean this planet 4.5 billion years ago. Earth thrived. Its natural elements helped it to flourish, and its bounty was for all to share. Then a life form of superior intelligence evolved, and for a while lived in harmony with the Earth. But paradise has been put into jeopardy. The motives are irrelevant. The consequences, severe. The remedy is written. The elements of life are clear.
In this edition of Elements, an appeal by Russia's Moscow Zoo was answered by a team of British veterinary dentists who've begun a series of life-saving tusk removal operations on 10 of the zoo's Pacific walruses. The Chelsea Flower Show in the heart of London is the largest and most famous of its type in the world. It recently promised 170,000 visitors some relief from a dismal British spring marred by foot and mouth disease and dreadful weather. The extreme shortage of water in Pakistan is forcing authorities to consider the possibility of melting glaciers to tide over the crisis. Water is in such demand that local political and religious parties have already staged a series of protests. And Move Over NASA. A colourful annual festival in Thailand showcases a competition for homemade rockets that doubles as a plea to the gods for good annual rainfall and a bounty of food. But first, offshore wind farms like this could soon be a familiar sight around the British coast, following the government's announcement that 18 developers will obtain licenses to build on the seabed. The developments will quadruple the amount of electricity Britain generates from wind. Energy Minister Peter Hain believes there's a key element in the government's strategy for renewable energy, which is why they're contributing £50 million in capital grants to the project. Offshore wind speeds are generally higher than coastal wind speeds, rising to around 1 metre per second higher 10 kilometres out to sea. Britain is the windiest country in Europe, with enough offshore wind to power the country 3 times over. About 150 companies are currently involved in the British wind energy business, producing enough electricity to supply 250,000 households. By 2010, all electricity supply companies will be required to source 10% of their supply from renewable energy, saving millions of tons of carbon dioxide from being emitted. But when it comes to wind power, it isn't all work and no play, as this kite flying event attests. Held annually near Cagliari on the island of Sardinia, Italy, the colourful Sky Show is always assured of getting enough breezy weather for all the enthusiasts who return without fail each year. Hundreds of kites from all over the world were displayed at the 10th anniversary of this international kite festival. The kite flyers come from as far afield as Japan, the US and New Zealand to take part. The decorators team from the UK showed their considerable flying skills with acrobatic kite displays and formation routines. Kites have existed for millennia. Historians believe they were invented in China some 5,000 years ago. Originally made of silk and bamboo, modern kites are made of the very latest and lightest fibers. In the ancient world, a kite's ability to fly reflected the connection between earth and sky, linking those on earth with the gods. As As well as all the kites on the shore, kite surfers took to the sea, swapping the traditional windsurfer for the kite. More people than ever before are harnessing wind power for inexpensive, high-energy fun and recreation. The Italian connection with the kite is extremely strong. Such a device was used by Marconi to hold up the antenna that allowed the first ever radio contact between Europe and the American continent. In Europe, kites became popular in the 16th century and found a scientific use in weather studies 2 centuries later. The Japanese kite masters Masaki Madegi and Yoshizo Sakuraba showed their innovative reinterpretations of traditional kites at this year's event, like the carp and the rakaku, a geometrical kite used in kite fighting. Even carefree wallowing walruses have to go to the dentist every now and then. And the walruses at the Moscow Zoo have a special reason for their upcoming appointments, even if they don't know about it yet. Their keepers fear that the walrus's tusks, which have been broken down and corroded by constant crashing against the concrete walls of their pool, could become seriously infected and may even threaten their lives. Walrus belong to the same order as seals and sea lions. All 3 are called pinnipeds, which refers to their webbed, fin-like feet. But even though there are many species of seals and sea lions in the world, there is only one species of walrus. It's composed of 2 subspecies, the Atlantic walrus and the Pacific walrus. Pacific walruses are found off the shores of eastern Russia and Alaska and tend to be somewhat more robust, with larger tusks than the Atlantic walruses, which are found in the Arctic waters of eastern Canada, Greenland, Norway and western Russia. A team of British dentists has volunteered their expertise to surgically remove the tusk from the walruses at the Moscow Zoo, a painful operation, but one that may ultimately save them. The team, headed by Peter Kertetz, specializes in fang and claw patients, but even this operation is unique for them. They had to study the peculiarities of the walrus's anatomical structure, invent new instruments, and think up new methods for removing a tusk. They also had to work out a way to safely inject anesthesia into their patients, who can weigh up to 1.5 tons. The dental team were unable to keep the first walrus stable under the anesthetic and decided to treat him on their next visit.
How many meals was that?
That was 6. The doc gloves, please, Tanya.
The second walrus, however, was able to take the anesthetic safely, and the team proceeded with the risky operation. Zoo spokesperson Tatiana Arzanova explained that 10 walruses would be going under the dentist's knife during the operations, which were expected to take a week. And judging by the first happy and healthy detusked creatures, Arzanova said she was confident that all her blubbery patients would pull through safely. Indian zookeepers had far less to be pleased about recently, with the sudden death of 2 rhinos. Zoo authorities in India's capital city, New Delhi, have begun preliminary health checks of all captive animals. They're using sonography to diagnose diseases among animals. Sonography, or ultrasound as it's popularly known, is a non-invasive, radiation-free imaging technique to evaluate the soft tissue structures in an organism. B.M. Arora, director of Delhi Zoo, said sonography as an imaging technique had not been used in wildlife medicine in the past in the country. Used extensively in veterinary practice in Western countries, it hasn't found much favor in India due to the lack of facilities and technical know-how. According to Arora, the The technique does not cause any discomfort to the animals and facilitates diagnosis of ailments which otherwise take a long time to properly detect. It's believed the rhinos died as a result of viral or bacterial agents. It's that time of year again when all eyes are on Chelsea in southwest London for the best known show of its type in the world. Months of preparation go into the displays. The floral pavilions house blooms from the world's finest nurseries and societies. New plants never seen before are unveiled here. New garden plans are dreamt up. Fountains and waterfalls can be bought. The show provides an inspiration for every gardener from the amateur to the professional. Traditional English roses have made something of a comeback at the show thanks to careful selection, while panels of Royal Horticultural Society judges tour the displays before the official opening to members and the public. This biosphere is modelled on the Eden Project and houses a rather unusual garden. It was designed and tended to by Leyhill prison inmates. Another feature this year is the huge increase in small courtyard gardens. Chelsea Flower Show boasts almost 140 years of tradition and is viewed as the most important event in the horticultural calendar. It's grown into an institution that officially heralds the start of summer and a whole new season of what the British love best, gardens and gardening. This year's show promises to treat green-fingered enthusiasts to displays ranging from Arabian deserts to an outdoor room for the contemporary man and a garden resembling Prince Charles's carpets. One exhibit is the garden of Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, President of the United Arab Emirates, while another even features made-to-wear flower fashions. The carpet garden includes elements of early Islamic gardens such as irrigation channels and covered beds. A central fountain weighing some 9 tons was constructed in Spain. Set in elegant grounds in London's Chelsea district on the banks of the River Thames, it's taken 800 people more than 3 weeks to prepare the site behind Christopher Wren's Royal Hospital, laying 3 miles of piping and enough canvas to cover 6 football fields. The show's organiser, the Royal Horticultural Society, restricts visitor numbers to 170,000 over 4 days. And if past data is anything to go by, visitors will drink 3,000 bottles of champagne and 110,000 cups of tea during the event. One of the more original installations is the Cirque Contemporary Men's Garden. Featuring furniture by designer Matthew Williamson, the garden comes complete with home comforts including a hi-fi and a fridge, reflecting all the must-haves in a totally modern and image-conscious young man's garden. Pakistan is a country so desperate for water that officials are even examining the possibility of melting their glaciers. With rains continuing below normal and the nation's reservoirs less than half full, the military government of General Pervez Musharraf has asked the National Weather Office to look at the possibility of melting the glaciers in their northern mountains. The Meteorological Department believes that by spraying some black carbon on the snow, the glaciers will absorb more radiation and the snow melt can be increased by 10 or 15%. However, there are pitfalls in speeding up the melting rate of glaciers, which have been a major source of water each spring and summer for millennia. Local political and religious parties have staged a series of protests against the water crisis, accusing the military government of withholding irrigation supplies in some areas of the province in favour of the populous central province of Punjab. The government denies the charge and says it's doing everything it can to solve the problem. Pakistan has suffered acute rain shortages, especially in the key agricultural provinces for the past 4 years. Across the border in India, the authorities have their own problems. The world-famous Himalayan glaciers Gangotri and Pindari in the northern state of Uttaranchal are fast receding due to climatic changes and increased human activity. Geologists fear that the Himalayan glaciers will disappear by 2035 if no immediate steps are taken. The impending danger of losing the glaciers has alarmed conservationists who say the Pindari glacier has shifted by about 1 kilometre. A geological survey in the northern city of Lucknow reveals that Gangotri glacier slid back 10 metres every year between 1935 and 1956, while between 56 and 95 it shrank by 27 to 30 metres and by a further 76 metres between 1996 and 99. At about 7,000 metres above sea level, the 32-kilometre long and 2.5-kilometre wide glacier has turned into a mass of snow due to increasing global temperatures. The depleting glacier has also been a major concern for the local population, and especially hermits who've set up hermitages in the remote Himalayan region. Aside from global warming, the main reason for the depletion of the glaciers is the increasing flow of tourists. Thousands of people visit the area each year and inadvertently pollute the environment, according to the chief of the Gangotri Conservation Project. The Uttaranchal government has now drawn up an action plan to save the glaciers. It's also set up a committee of experts to advise it on the issues and control tourist activities in the region, in the hopes of protecting the environment. Move over NASA, it's the Bun Bangphai Rocket Festival in Thailand. More than 20,000 people turned out for this year's celebrations in Yasothon province, 500 kilometres northeast of Bangkok. The festival begins with a colourful parade down the main street, with local residents showing off some of the more beautiful rocket creations. The event is held at the beginning of the rice growing season and is also known as the Rainmaking Festival. Locals believe their homemade rockets awaken Phayatan, the god of rain, and that if he's pleased with the display, he'll take care of their crops and create a wealth of food over the coming months. Made from bamboo poles, plastic cylinders and enough gunpowder to blow up a small village, the rockets are raised onto tall bamboo launch pads and blasted skywards. Most of the large rockets measure 2.5 metres long and contain about 7 kilograms of gunpowder. Teams come from all over the region to enter their rockets in the competition. This year's event even attracted an entry from the local police station. The winning rocket is the one that stays up in the sky for the longest amount of time. The team takes home a trophy and thousands of baht in prize money. But what goes up must come down, and there have been serious concerns raised over the safety of the festival. Organisers claim their event is safe, unless of course your rocket doesn't quite leave the launch pad. It's a tradition for the losing teams to have their rocket builders thrown into the mud, and there were no exceptions this year. A very different sort of festival takes place in the beautiful Caribbean town of Bluefields, Nicaragua's main Caribbean port. Bluefields' economy is based on shrimp, lobster and deep-sea fishing, and it's the birthplace of a particular kind of Caribbean music called Palo de Mayo, which is also the name of the street festival held each May. Palo de Mayo is the maypole celebration, traditionally enjoyed by the British as a courtship ritual, but transformed into a fertility dance both for Bluefields harvest and its womenfolk. During the 17th century, British landowners shipped in slaves to work their farms and plantations. These are their descendants. Local law states that the maypole tradition was brought over by the British as a celebration of the Tree of Youth and Happiness, and was adorned with ribbons that children would dance with and tie around their desired partner. Bluefields, located about 600 kilometres southeast of Managua, has approximately 180,000 inhabitants, many of which belong to one of 6 local ethnic groups: Miskitos, Sumos, Garifonas, Ramas, Mestizos and Creoles. The inhabitants of the area are mostly English-speaking. The atmosphere is relaxed and the easy tropical living and culture of the Caribbean is the norm. For the Creoles, who are of Jamaican and African descent, the ritual was advanced to the next phase of courtship, a fertility ritual. It serves to ask the Virgin Princess, Mayaya, goddess of fertility, for rain for their harvest and for female fertility and promise of new life. Lizzie Nelson says they dance for good production. She's been performing the dance since the 1930s and now teaches it to younger generations. This modern version of the maypole dance is characterized by Afro-Caribbean music and dancing. Local inhabitants still continue to perform the traditional dance. Miss Lizzie, as she's known here, adds that she believes the people of her region were born with the spirit of the dance and its purpose. The city's inhabitants have ambitious dreams of attracting international tourism with their week-long festival. In actual fact, the unemployment rate is high, and due to soaring coconut prices, many Bluefields households can't even afford to make the traditional Creole stew known as rundown, let alone these colourful dancing costumes. Politicians and corporate sponsors have co-opted the annual Maypole Street Festival, and Spanish, Nicaragua's official language, is becoming the city's predominant tongue. No one really knows how much longer the people of Bluefields will be dancing to the Caribbean rhythms that musician Bob Marley once called positive vibrations.